Imagine starting your day. You wake up, check your smartphone, and then head to the kitchen. You grab a plastic container of yogurt from the fridge and pour milk from a plastic jug into your cereal. Your morning coffee might come from a machine with plastic parts. Before leaving the house, you might apply lotion from a plastic tube or spray perfume from a bottle. Each of these simple actions, which are part of a daily routine for billions of people around the world, involves contact with plastic. We touch it, eat from it, and even breathe in tiny particles of it. It has become an inseparable part of modern life, a silent companion in almost every moment. What we often fail to consider is that this convenience comes at a hidden cost. Plastic is not just one single material. It is a complex mixture of polymers and a cocktail of thousands of added chemicals. These chemicals are not permanently locked into the plastic. They can leach out, migrating into our food, our water, and the air we breathe. They can be absorbed through our skin from the personal care products we use, or the clothes we wear. We are living in a constant, invisible cloud of chemical exposure, a consequence of our reliance on plastic that we are only just beginning to fully comprehend. This isn't a distant environmental problem, it's a personal, intimate one, happening inside our own bodies every single day. To make this invisible threat visible, a recent experiment was conducted. 3 CNN reporters, located in major global cities, wore special silicone wristbands for 5 days. These wristbands were designed to act like a second skin, absorbing the chemicals they were exposed to in their everyday environments. The goal was simple: to measure the chemical footprint left on their bodies by the plastic world we all inhabit. The results were not just surprising, they were a stark, wake-up call. The wristbands revealed a personal chemical cocktail that each person carries with them, a direct result of the products they use, the food they eat, and the air they breathe in their homes and offices. The findings from this small but powerful experiment paint a vivid picture of a universal issue. The invisible cloud is real, and it is dense with chemicals that scientists are increasingly linking to serious health problems. It's a silent exposure that happens without our consent or knowledge, from the moment we are conceived and throughout our entire lives. Understanding this exposure is the first step toward addressing a growing public health concern. We must begin to question the safety of the materials we have so readily welcomed into every corner of our lives, and consider the long-term consequences of this unprecedented chemical experiment on human health. Take a moment to look around you. How many items made of or containing plastic can you spot? Your computer keyboard, the casing of your television, the pen on your desk, and the food packaging in your pantry are just the beginning. Plastics have revolutionized countless industries, offering durability, flexibility, and low-cost production. They are in our cars, our homes, our offices, and our hospitals. We wear clothes made from synthetic plastic fibers like polyester and nylon. Our children play with plastic toys, and we rely on plastic containers to store and preserve our food. This material has become so deeply integrated into our daily existence that it is difficult to imagine a world without it. The versatility of plastic is due to the wide array of chemicals added during its manufacturing process. These additives are what give a product its specific properties. Some chemicals make plastic soft and flexible, like in a child's toy or a shower curtain. Others make it hard and shatterproof, like in a reusable water bottle or the lining of a food can. There are also flame retardants added to furniture and electronics to reduce fire risk, and colorants to give plastic its vibrant hues. The problem is that these chemical additives are often not tightly bound to the plastic matrix. Over time, and with exposure to heat, light, or wear and tear, they can escape into the surrounding environment. This migration of chemicals means our exposure is constant and comes from multiple sources. When you microwave food in a plastic container, chemicals can leach directly into your meal. When you drink from a plastic bottle, you might be ingesting more than just water. Even handling a simple thermal paper receipt from a store can transfer chemicals onto your skin, which can then be absorbed into your bloodstream. Dust in our homes is another significant source of exposure, as tiny plastic particles and the chemicals they carry settle on surfaces, which we then inhale or ingest. The plastic everywhere reality has created a chemical everywhere problem. The scale of this issue is immense. A 2024 study published in the journal Nature identified a staggering 16,000 different chemicals used in plastics. What is even more alarming is that the researchers concluded at least 4,200 of these are considered hazardous to human health and the environment. For about 10,000 other chemicals, there simply isn't enough data to even assess their safety. This means we are surrounded by thousands of compounds whose long-term effects on our bodies are completely unknown. Our daily lives have become a large-scale, uncontrolled experiment, and the full consequences are only now starting to surface. Among the thousands of chemicals used in plastics, one group stands out due to its widespread use and significant health concerns: phthalates. These are often called plasticizers because their primary job is to make plastics, particularly PVC, soft and flexible. Think of a rubber duck, a garden hose, a vinyl shower curtain, or the soft plastic packaging that encases so many products. The pliability of these items is often thanks to phthalates, but their use extends far beyond soft plastics. They're also found in cosmetics, perfumes, nail polish and hairspray to help fragrances last longer, and to make lotions feel smooth. They are in our furniture, our flooring, and even some medical devices. The reporters who wore the chemical tracking wristbands found that phthalates were the chemicals they were most highly exposed to. This was true for all three participants, despite living in different cities across the world. One phthalate in particular, known as DEHP, showed up in the highest concentrations. This is worrying because DEHP is one of the most studied and most notorious chemicals in this family. It is so common that it is found in the bodies of nearly every person tested in developed countries. Our exposure is continuous and unavoidable, coming from the food we eat, the air we breathe, and the products we touch every single day. The health risks associated with phthalate exposure are extensive and well documented. Numerous studies have linked these chemicals to serious reproductive health issues. In men, exposure has been associated with reduced sperm quality and fertility problems. In pregnant women, phthalates can cross the placenta, and exposure has been linked to premature births and developmental issues in their children. Once born, children exposed to higher levels of phthalates may face an increased risk of behavioral disorders like ADHD, as well as asthma and allergies. The evidence is mounting that these chemicals are actively harming us at critical stages of development. Beyond reproductive and developmental health, the danger of phthalates extends to other chronic diseases. Scientists have found strong links between phthalate exposure and an increased risk of obesity and cancer. Perhaps most alarmingly, recent research has connected them to cardiovascular disease. In fact, one major study co-authored by Professor Leonardo Tresande at NYU estimated that the phthalate DEHP was responsible for a staggering 13% of all cardiovascular deaths among people aged 55 to 64 globally in 2018. This transforms phthalates from a vague chemical threat into a direct and deadly contributor to one of the world's leading causes of death. Alongside phthalates, another group of chemicals frequently found in plastics and in our bodies is the bisphenols. The most famous member of this family is bisphenol A, or BPA. For decades, BPA has been a key building block for polycarbonate plastic, a type of hard, clear, and durable plastic. It was used to make everything from baby bottles and sippy cups to reusable water bottles and food storage containers. BPA is also used to make epoxy resins, which form a protective lining inside most food and drink cans to prevent the metal from corroding and contaminating the contents. It is also found in a wide range of other products, including electronics, car parts, and even the thermal paper used for cash register receipts. Like phthalates, bisphenols are not chemically bound to the products they are in. This means they can leach out, especially when heated. This is why concerns were first raised about using polycarbonate baby bottles, as warming milk could cause BPA to migrate into the infant's formula. While the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, banned BPA from baby bottles and sippy cups over a decade ago due to public pressure, it still considers the low levels of exposure from other food contact products to be safe. However, many scientists and public health advocates strongly disagree, pointing to a growing body of evidence that suggests even very low doses can be harmful. The European Union has taken a stronger stance, banning BPA from all food contact materials as of January 2025. The health concerns surrounding bisphenols, particularly BPA, are significant because they are known endocrine disruptors. This means they can mimic or block the body's natural hormones, especially estrogen. This interference can have profound effects on the body's delicate hormonal balance. Studies have linked BPA exposure to a host of health problems, including fetal abnormalities for those exposed in the womb and neurodevelopmental disorders in children. It has also been associated with altered timing of puberty, causing it to start earlier in some children. For adults, long-term exposure is linked to an increased risk of diabetes, heart disease, and certain types of cancer, particularly breast and prostate cancer. In response to public concern, many companies have started marketing products as BPA-free. While this may sound reassuring, it often leads to a practice known as regrettable substitution or chemical whack-a-mole. Companies simply replace BPA with other chemically similar bisphenols, such as bisphenol S or BPS or bisphenol F or BPF. Because these substitutes are newer, they are less studied, but emerging research suggests they may be just as harmful, if not more so, than the BPA they replaced. This means that a BPA-free label does not guarantee safety. It simply means you might be exposed to a different, poorly tested chemical from the same problematic family, leaving consumers in a state of constant uncertainty. To truly grasp the danger posed by chemicals like phthalates and bisphenols, we need to understand the concept of an endocrine disruptor. The endocrine system is the body's intricate network of glands that produce and release hormones. These hormones act as chemical messengers, traveling through the bloodstream to control a vast range of bodily functions. They regulate everything from our growth and development during childhood to our metabolism, our sleep cycles, our mood, and our ability to reproduce. Think of the endocrine system as the body's master control panel, ensuring that all its complex processes run smoothly and in harmony. It is essential for maintaining our overall health and well-being. An endocrine-disrupting chemical, or EDC, is a foreign substance that interferes with this delicate system. It can do so in several ways. Some EDCs, like BPA, can mimic the body's natural hormones. They have a similar molecular shape to hormones, like estrogen, allowing them to fit into the hormone's receptors on cells. This tricks the body into thinking it has more of a certain hormone than it actually does, triggering biological responses at the wrong time or in the wrong amount. Other EDCs can block real hormones from binding to their receptors, preventing them from carrying out their necessary functions. Still others can interfere with how hormones are made, transported, or broken down in the body. The consequences of this disruption can be profound, especially during critical windows of development. Exposure in the womb, during infancy, or during puberty can permanently alter the body's development and increase the risk of disease later in life. Because hormones operate at incredibly low concentrations, even tiny amounts of endocrine-disrupting chemicals can have significant effects. This challenges the traditional toxicological idea that the dose makes the poison. For EDCs, it's not just about the dose, but also about the timing of the exposure. A small exposure at a vulnerable developmental stage can cause more damage than a larger exposure in adulthood. This is why children are considered especially vulnerable. Their bodies and organ systems are still developing, and their hormonal systems are orchestrating this complex process. Pound for pound, children also breathe more air, drink more water, and eat more food than adults, meaning they have a higher level of exposure relative to their body size. Furthermore, their detoxification systems are not yet fully mature, making it harder for their bodies to break down and get rid of these harmful chemicals. The exposure that begins in the womb and continues through childhood can set the stage for a lifetime of health problems, including learning disabilities, fertility issues, obesity, and cancer. The experiment with the chemical tracking wristbands provided a personal and powerful glimpse into the scale of our chemical exposure. The fact that the three reporters, living thousands of miles apart in New York, London, and Hong Kong, all showed significant exposure to the same classes of chemicals, highlights the global nature of this problem. On average, each wristband detected 28 different chemicals after just 5 days of wear. This is just a snapshot of the constant chemical barrage our bodies endure. The wristbands were designed to test for 73 common chemicals, but as we know from recent studies, there are over 16,000 chemicals used in plastics alone, meaning the true number we are exposed to is likely much higher. This is not a problem confined to people living in heavily industrialized areas. The chemicals in plastics are now ubiquitous in the global environment. They are found in the deepest oceans, on the highest mountains, and in the Arctic ice. They travel through the air, settle in dust, and contaminate our food and water supplies. This means that no one is truly safe from exposure, regardless of where they live. The synthetic chemicals we created for convenience have now become an unavoidable part of our planet's ecosystem, and consequently, a part of our own internal biology. We are all participating in this experiment, whether we want to or not. The health implications of this widespread exposure are becoming terrifyingly clear. A groundbreaking 2024 study that looked at data from 38 countries drew a direct line between just 3 specific chemicals and devastating health outcomes. The researchers linked exposure to BPA, the phthalate DEHP, and a common flame retardant to over 160,000 deaths and more than 5 million cases of heart disease. This is not a theoretical risk or a future possibility. This is a calculation of the harm that is already happening right now. These are not just statistics. They represent millions of people who have suffered or died prematurely due to chemical exposures from everyday products. The problem is set to get much worse. Global plastic production is on a steep upward trajectory. If current trends and policies continue, production is projected to increase by a staggering 70% by the year 2040. More plastic production means more chemical additives will be manufactured and used. This will inevitably lead to higher levels of these chemicals in our environment and in our bodies, further amplifying the health risks we already face. We are standing on the precipice of an escalating public health crisis, fueled by our insatiable demand for plastic and a lack of effective regulation to control the hazardous chemicals it contains. The pervasive exposure to plastic chemicals is not just an individual health concern, it is rapidly becoming a global health crisis. The sheer number of people affected, combined with the severity of the associated diseases, places an immense burden on healthcare systems worldwide. When we consider the links between these chemicals and major public health issues like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and cancer, the economic and social costs are astronomical. Treating these chronic conditions requires vast resources, and the loss of productivity from illness and premature death further strains national economies. The invisible chemicals in our plastics are exacting a very visible and very heavy toll. Unfortunately, the international response to this crisis has been slow and inadequate. Hopes were high for a global plastics treaty, which many believed would finally introduce meaningful regulations on the most hazardous chemicals used in the industry. These negotiations brought together nations from around the world to forge a binding agreement to tackle the plastic pollution problem at its source. However, after years of talks, the negotiations collapsed in failure in August 2025. This was a significant blow to public health and environmental advocates, as it leaves the world without a coordinated plan to control the production and use of these dangerous substances, allowing the chemical industry to continue its practices largely unchecked. The regulatory landscape that remains is a patchwork of inconsistent and often weak rules that vary from country to country. For example, while the EU has moved to ban BPA from all food contact materials, the United States has taken a much more limited approach, banning it only from baby products. This piecemeal approach creates confusion for consumers and allows for loopholes that perpetuate exposure. It also fuels the chemical whack-a-mole problem, where a chemical banned in one region can be replaced by a slightly different untested chemical or simply continue to be used elsewhere, ending up in products that are traded globally. Without strong, harmonized international standards, we are fighting a losing battle. This lack of effective oversight means the responsibility for avoiding exposure falls unfairly on the shoulders of individuals. People are expected to navigate a complex and confusing marketplace, trying to decipher misleading labels and make safe choices for their families without adequate information. This is an impossible task. The solution cannot be individual consumer action alone. The crisis demands a systemic response. We need governments to step up and implement strong regulations that prioritize public health over corporate profits. The looming health crisis requires bold policy, not just personal vigilance, to turn the tide against the chemical contamination of our bodies and our world. While systemic change is urgently needed, we are not entirely powerless. There are practical and effective steps we can all take to significantly reduce our personal exposure to harmful plastic chemicals. The good news is that many of these chemicals, like phthalates and bisphenols, have relatively short half-lives in the body. This means that once you reduce your exposure, their levels in your system can drop within just a few days. Making conscious changes to your daily habits can lower your long-term risk of developing chronic diseases. The effort you put in today can have a direct and rapid impact on your health. The first and most impactful area to focus on is your kitchen. Food is a primary route of exposure, so changing how you store, prepare, and eat your food is key. Ditch the plastic food containers and water bottles. Instead, opt for materials like glass, stainless steel, or ceramic for storing leftovers and for your reusable drink bottles. Never, ever microwave food in plastic containers, even if they are labeled microwave safe, as heat dramatically increases the rate at which chemicals leach into your food. Similarly, avoid putting plastics in the dishwasher. The high heat and harsh detergents can degrade the material over time, causing more chemicals to be released in future uses. Beyond the kitchen, pay attention to the products you bring into your home. When buying items for children, who are most vulnerable, look for toys made from natural materials like untreated wood, silicone, or natural rubber instead of soft plastics. Try to reduce your consumption of highly processed and packaged foods, as they go through more steps where they can pick up chemical contaminants from machinery and packaging. When you are at home or in the office, ensure good ventilation by opening windows regularly. This helps to clear out airborne chemicals and dust particles that have accumulated indoors, improving your indoor air quality. Finally, be a mindful consumer in all aspects of your life. Avoid handling thermal paper receipts whenever possible. If you must take one, wash your hands afterward, and definitely don't let children play with them. Choose cosmetics and personal care products that are labeled phthalate-free and have simpler ingredient lists. By making these small but consistent changes, you can create a safer environment for yourself and your family. Each conscious choice is a step away from the invisible chemical cloud and a step toward taking back control of your health in a world saturated with plastic. Taking individual steps to reduce exposure is a crucial and empowering form of self-defense in our chemical-laden world. These actions protect our health and the health of our families. However, personal responsibility can only go so far. We cannot shop our way out of a systemic crisis of this magnitude. The ultimate solution does not lie in every individual becoming a chemical expert, endlessly researching products and navigating a minefield of marketing claims. The burden of safety should not rest on the consumer. It must be placed on the industries that create these products and the governments that are supposed to regulate them. What we desperately need is a fundamental shift toward transparency and accountability. Companies must be required to disclose all the chemicals they use in their products, not just the active ingredients. The current system, where thousands of chemicals and plastics are considered proprietary trade secrets, is unacceptable when public health is at stake. We have a right to know what we are being exposed to. With this information, independent scientists can properly assess the risks and regulators can make informed decisions. Without transparency, we remain in the dark, unable to connect the dots between exposure and disease until the damage has already been done to millions of people. This call for transparency must be paired with a demand for stronger, health-protective regulations. We need to move away from the current innocent until proven guilty approach to chemical safety, where a chemical is used for decades before sufficient harm is documented to warrant a ban. Instead, we should adopt the precautionary principle. If a chemical shows credible evidence of potential harm, its use should be restricted until its safety can be definitively proven. This means shifting the burden of proof onto the chemical manufacturers. They must be required to demonstrate that their products are safe before they end up on store shelves and in our homes. The failure of the Global Plastics Treaty was a setback, but it must not be the end of the story. It should serve as a powerful wake-up call for citizens everywhere to demand action from their own governments. We must pressure our elected officials to pass strong national laws that restrict the most hazardous chemicals, close regulatory loopholes, and hold polluting industries accountable. We must support organizations that are fighting for our right to a safe and healthy environment. Our individual choices are important, but our collective voice is powerful. Only by working together can we force the systemic change needed to end this toxic experiment and build a future where our health is no longer compromised for the sake of convenience.